Assalamu alaikum everyone and good morning. It's wonderful to see you all here because, the last week has been rather cold and most of us really haven't been wanting to get out and get about this early. So I'd like to welcome you to the Karachi Literature Festival and this session on art and literature. When Amina Sayed asked me to curate this session, I thought it would give us a good opportunity to discuss a theoretical side of art, something we are not always familiar with. Because of the overwhelming market, we never really get to discuss history as well as other theoretical areas that feed art and make it what it is. And of course, I'm fully aware that this morning we are competing with Shobha De, the glamorous novelist. But, that's the way art history is. We do compete all the time with all the color and glamour of the art world. And we who write art history are always on the fringe of the scene. So it's nothing new to us, but it's always good to have an audience. And I hope you will participate in the discussion. I would like to begin by thanking the distinguished panel, Dr. Asma Ibrahim, Amin Gulji, Tehmoor Ahmed Suri, and Rizwanullah Khan, who've joined us. They've taken out time to share their views and experience with us. The question today is art history relevant? And I think that's a question we continue to ask ourselves as art professionals. Because as a young nation, we are still struggling to bring coherence to a very layered and diverse identity, a very diverse cultural identity. And we are always struggling to kind of bring sense and to understand that history. It's also a frequently asked questions because in our environment, and I think indeed the world, the marketplace has become very important to art. And everything has been, in a way, taken over by that impulse to trade, buy, and collect art. Art has always had patrons, but the way we look at art today, it is more about dealing with art as a commodity. So I think in that respect, art history is no longer that relevant to many. Our panel will address concerns regarding Pakistan's structural capacity to generate art history, to write and document it, and how the ways we are teaching art history and the perception of art history, which, as I will sort of discuss later, has become problematic because of the credibility issue. Our entire history, more recent history, has been problematic in documenting objectively. There is also a question of the contribution of earlier masters. Does the younger generation of artists understand their very important role? Because today the success of the contemporary art internationally did not evolve in a vacuum. It is they who sustained under very difficult conditions the art movement, that we see today flowering and sort of being received in the art centers of the world. And of course, the role of art schools. How are we teaching our art history? How are we teaching art history? I think these breaks are always interesting. They remind us that, things can go wrong. And technology is not, infallible. Well, History, I think the perception of history itself has changed over the period, and particularly in the age of globalization. There is a school of thought, of course, that agrees with Fukuyama's influential theory, the end of history, which argues that in a world so radically and fundamentally changed after the end of Cold War confrontations and with the impact of technology, history as we had known it earlier has changed and is no longer relevant to us. This, of course, is a controversial viewpoint, but has gained popularity in nihilistic discourses. For Pakistan, we take our history very seriously and we take pride in it. But we have also found it difficult to document it with objectivity. So its credibility has suffered, and people generally have a cynical view of history. Because as we all have seen, during different political periods, different kinds of history has been privileged. So obviously, that too has to be taken into account. Besides this, cultural history in Pakistan is not traditionally compartmentalized. We take a holistic view of our creativity. But unlike this, the Western format requires that we write it according to specializations. And I think that too presents a challenge. And today, one of our panelists will talk about it. And now some sort of housekeeping instructions. Please turn off your mobiles before our panelists begin to speak, or put them on silent. Each panelist will have about 6 to 7 minutes to present their perspective. And we've kept it tight so the audience can ask questions later on and we can have a robust participation from them. Our first speaker is Amin Gulji, so we go right into the business of art practice and art history. Amin Gulji is known to most of you. He's Pakistan's eminent artist at a young age. He has shown internationally and of course nationally. He has won national awards. Amin studied art history at Yale, along with a degree in economics. But he, in a way, gave both of them to do sculpture and followed in his famous father, Mr. Gulji's footsteps to become an artist. And since then, there has been no turning back, and Amin has had a very successful career and is recognized widely for his work. So Amin, has art history been relevant for you?
Okay, here I go. Good afternoon, or good morning. I was born to a family of artists. My father was a painter. I grew up and I remember my images from childhood, which included Sunday mornings with Ali Imam. And the entire artist community would get together, they would drink Cossack vodka, they would fight, they would argue, they would joke, they would laugh. I remember as a child going to Ahmed Parvez's flat in Gulshan Iqbal, and he had covered, and I remember the walls glowing with fire, with color. He had done frescoes all over the walls. He died and the flat was whitewashed. I left for university. The only thing my parents have asked me for is please do not be an artist. And I agreed with them. I had no intention of coming back home or being an artist. I went to university, and that's why I majored in economics. I thought it's a sensible career and will take me far, far, far away from the scene that I grew up in. Unfortunately or fortunately, sophomore year, Dominique Malaquet, a friend of mine who later became an art historian, took me to my first art history class. And I went there kicking and screaming, I hate Baroque art, Dominique. I hate it. No, come with me, come with me. Could not say no to that woman. So I went, fell in love with the professor who later became my advisor for my thesis, and I started taking art history classes because they were a hell of a lot more interesting than economic ones. And at the end of the day, lo and behold, I had a major in art history. I wanted to do my thesis on Islamic gardens, which was the fight in my university, because there was no Islamic art history department at that time. Luckily, Oleg Grabar agreed to be my secondary advisor at Harvard, and he helped me win my prize for my thesis. I come back to the question, is art history relevant? I mean, I look back to my childhood, and is it relevant? Were those people relevant? Did they form us? Did they form me? And more importantly, who writes the art history? Who writes our history? Do we write it? Do we get others to write it for us? Which audience are we catering to? Are we interested in people relevant in this context? Or are we more interested in people other people think are more relevant for this context? These are just questions, and I have absolutely no answers. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
That was nice and short, Amin, and I'm sure there are going to be a lot of questions, so we'll sort of get into many of those strands later on. Our second speaker is Asma Ibrahim. She's a well-known figure in in history circles here, because Asma has a PhD in history. She's a well-known archaeologist. She has been the director of the National Museum here. And of course, she worked on a very important excavation site, which was Bhambor, and also put together its site museum there, among other achievements in archaeology. And she writes extensively on her subject. And currently, she is the director of the State Bank Museum. So Asma is very directly connected to the community and art history, of course. So Asma, let's hear more about the interaction between the two.
Well, thank you, Nilofer. Me and Nilofer, we have been striving hard for the last, I think, 10 years about having art history. And you must be wondering, first of all, let me give you an introduction that what an archaeologist is doing between the art historians and artists. So this is one thing which I always want to put across to the audience, to the art schools, and to the artists, that how important art history is for archaeology. In archaeology, we have two kinds of dating, and one dating is absolute dating, which is totally scientific, and the other dating is...
You lost the sound again. Yeah.
Is this one?
Yeah.
Yes. So,
Hello. Yeah.
this one. Well, okay, you're fine, no problem. So we have to be very quick because of the time. So I was saying that why archaeologist is sitting in between the artist and, about the dating, yeah. So relative dating is totally related to the artistic expression of that time. And this is one of the basic dating which we do initially when we get an object, and we have to relate this object with certain time period, and there comes the art history. So one has to know the importance of art history for this subject, and I'm always trying to convince art schools that how they can play an important role in the museums, and they can join hands with the museum. We can have joint projects to carry out and study the art history with the relevance of the objects we have in the museum. And especially like Nilofer told that we were excavating at Bhambor, which is an Islamic site, which is much, much later, that belongs to the 8th century. But I will be talking about the art which is about 85,000 years old. This is the first example of art in the world from Morocco. and the other one is 75,000 years old art painting we have discovered from South Africa. So these kind of art we are dealing with. Who are these people? What were they doing with these paints? How they were making these paints? And what paintings they were painting? And we have to write history about that. So we need artists and your help of all these people who are dealing with the art at that time. Then comes the Neolithic period, which is 10,000 BC, and we again are facing with so many paintings, and we still have to work on that in detail. And in Dadu area in Pakistan, we have about, one can say about 200 art pieces in the mountain area, and nobody knows what are those paintings, and we are still in process of discovering. And coming to 3000 BC, Indus Valley, you might have known, most of you must have visited Mohenjo-daro and you know Indus Valley civilization. We have sculptures there, we have religious rites there, we have deities, we have concept of mother goddess, we have seals. And there in the seals, we have pictograms and we have figurines. They are intermingled, and we have to distinguish between these two, how art was developing, how the process of evolution of human was going on, and how the process of art and development has come up to this age. Then coming to 1500 BC, we have Gandhara grave culture, and then we have coins in 600 BC. The coins are started with artistic patterns. The initial coin was with the patterns on, they were stamped on the coins, and they were metal pieces. Coming back to the paintings, we have beautiful paintings from this time period. So my aim and my objective is always to convince you people, you artists, art schools, to please join hands with us in archaeology, in museology, and in history, and we need to write all this history with the help of you all. So as far as I am concerned,